Hi again, everybody. Welcome back. We're going to try today to use this video to finish the fighting part, at least, of World War I. And the big changes that lead to the end of the war. So we're actually going to start with looking at the map, and you can see one of the big changes that this map indicates, of course, is the participation of the United States, which of course stayed out of the war all the way up until 1917. We officially maintained a position of neutrality. The United States did not really want to take sides. We did help and supply as much as we could to the Triple Entente powers, but really the only reason for that was that we didn't have access to trade with the Central Powers because of the British blockade. So the thing that makes this map possible, the thing that brings the United States into the war, is this. In January of 1917, the Germans sent a telegram to Mexico. And in the telegram, what you can see is they're making two announcements. Number one is they say, we're going to start in February of 1917 unrestricted submarine warfare, which means we will attack any ship that approaches the United Kingdom, including American ships if necessary. But they also acknowledge that they would like to keep the United States neutral if possible. The second paragraph here, what it tells you is, if the United States does get involved in this particular war, the German Empire is proposing a special alliance with Mexico, which of course is supposed to be secret, that they'll make war together, they'll make peace together, this will be a full, real alliance, and that the Germans will help Mexico to give them money, to give them as much as they possibly can, and to help them to reconquer the territory that Mexico lost in the Mexican-American War in the 1840s, including New Mexico, Texas, and Arizona. And so this telegram was sent from Germany to Mexico. At least allegedly, it was sent from Germany to Mexico. In April of 1917, this telegram was sent to the United States from British intelligence saying, by the way, get ready because the war's coming to you if you don't wind up coming to it. Now, the problem with this idea, of course, is Mexico was right in the middle of a revolution of their own. They're in the middle of a civil war of their own. So the idea that they were going to attack the United States was really not a really serious concern for anybody. But once this telegram, which is referred to as the Zimmermann telegram, it's called that because the foreign minister of Germany, his last name was Zimmermann. When this became public knowledge, there was a huge public outcry. President Wilson went to the Congress of the United States and asked for them to declare war, which they did. However, just because you declare war doesn't magically mean that all of a sudden you're going to be able to go and fight and get into battles. And so it's going to take a while to raise our army, to train that army. And so one of the things that's really important to remember is that the United States really doesn't start getting involved in World War I until the late spring and then into the summer of 1918. And that's kind of a big deal because the war ends in November of 1918. So when you hear about the United States winning World War I, that's really not a fair comparison to make because we were really only in the war for about 6 months in any measurable way. However, the thing that gets us involved, of course, is the Zimmermann telegram, and now we've got a brand new country with huge amounts of resources, with huge amounts of people that are going to start coming to the Western Front, and the Germans know that that's going to be a really big problem for them, and so they're going to have to start making some decisions on the strength of the fact that they're going to probably lose this war due to American involvement. Now, the second reason that the American involvement in World War I is really important is not just because we're going to help end the war, but also what we bring with us. Now, this is particularly interesting right now because, of course, we are all locked down because of the COVID-19 virus outbreak here in the fall of 2020. Well, when Americans started to cross the ocean and go over to Europe, one of the things we see is a lot of very close contact. People didn't practice social distancing in trenches. And as a result of that, one of the things we see during the 1918-1919 period is an outbreak of the flu. This was an H1N1 virus, which was referred to as the Spanish flu because the original rumor was that the flu itself actually started in Spain. Today we actually believe that it probably started in Kansas and that it transitions from animal populations, probably pigs, into humans, and then those humans traveled across the world and interacted with Frenchmen and English people and Indian people and all kinds of other people, and then those people took it back to their countries, and of course, because so many people were moving so fast and so far around the world, this really did become a major pandemic. If you'll notice, the pandemic came in 3 different waves. It came first as a small wave in the summer of 1918. We got a big spike in the fall and winter time of 1918, and then there was another kind of medium-sized spike in cases in the late winter and early spring of 1919. Now, the reason that this becomes a really big problem is since World War I was a total war, there was a lot of resources going to things other than taking care of people's medical needs. And as a result, this was a humongous, devastating effect to the entire world. And in fact, it's pretty much the most deadly disease that has ever existed on Earth. The estimates are between 50 and 100 million people died of this particular flu virus in 1918. And the really scary part was, unlike the coronavirus that we're dealing with now, and unlike most other illnesses, this one specifically targeted young and healthy people, particularly people in their 30s and 20s, and that's mostly who's in the war. So you've got a huge population of very vulnerable people sitting out in a trench someplace, getting sick, getting flu, coming home, bringing it with them. Medicine was very primitive back then. We didn't have antibiotics. We really didn't have a tremendous amount of vaccines. We didn't have any vaccine for this particular one. And so all of a sudden this disease crops up right smack in the middle of the war. It kills between 50 and 100 million people worldwide, and it's just absolutely devastating to what's going on around in World War I itself. Beyond that, what we see is the Germans know by the spring of 1918, the Germans know that they're going to lose the war, and so they decide to put themselves in the best position possible to negotiate a successful peace for Germany. And so in April of 1918, the German army staged a huge offensive. They used poison gas, they used massive artillery bombardments, they tried to push that front line as far as they could so that they had a better position to negotiate from when they knew that the war was going to come to an end. And so this it's called the 100 Days Offensive sometimes. It was ultimately the Allied response to the German offensive. It's a counteroffensive. By August, really everybody in the war knew that the Germans were going to lose. The Kaiser believed that victory was impossible. The German command thought that victory was impossible, and people were trying to make plans for what exactly they were going to do about it. Well, what they decided to do about it was a German prince named Prince Maximilian of Baden decided that one of the big hang-ups for the German government was going to be that they were a monarchy, a constitutional monarchy, but a monarchy that was negotiating with France, the United Kingdom, the United States, and Italy, all of which were democracies. And he said, the problem is they're not going to treat us very well because we're not a democracy. So he said, what we should do is we should become a democracy. And so Prince Max of Baden, in October of 1918, overthrew the Kaiser, overthrew the government, and decided to create a new government which was called the Weimar Republic, W-E-I-M-E-R, the Weimar Republic. The very first thing that this new government does is they surrender to the Allied powers, to the Triple Entente. They sign what is called an armistice, and the armistice says that at 11 o'clock in the morning, on the 11th day of the 11th month, which is November of 1918, the shooting part of World War I would end so that they could sit down together and negotiate a peace treaty. So on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918, which is the Armistice Day, that's when the shooting part of World War I comes to an end. The Allied commanders sit down and they go to this particular train car at 5 o'clock in the morning on November the 11th, and they sign the armistice. Now, I know that this sounds really weird, but I want you to remember that train car because it's going to come up later and it's going to be a big deal. Okay? This particular event of overthrowing Germany's government and surrendering to the Allies and then signing this armistice, Germans will eventually refer to this as the stab in the back, because at this particular point, the Germans had not lost any territory. They were occupying other people's countries. They had increased the size of their country, and ultimately they thought that they were winning the war just at the time that they surrendered, and they did all of this just to set themselves up to be able to negotiate a good position for Germany. That's important, so keep that in mind too. Remember the train car, remember the stab in the back. That's it for this video about the end of World War I. Next video is going to be about the impacts and consequences of the First World War, and ultimately about the peace treaties that come out of the First World War and how the war itself actually comes to an end. So again, hope everybody's sticking with these, and I hope that they're doing well to clarify your understanding of World War I. Drop a comment below if you would like to, and I will see you in the next video. Stay healthy, stay safe.